Reviewing games is a fairly tricky business. Many people may have told you that before, and it may sound a little bit cliche at the point where perhaps you shrug your shoulders and go, well, it can't be that bad, can it? All you got to do is play the game. Well, I'm here to discuss otherwise, and what actually made me realize this more thoroughly than ever before was reviewing Attack on Titan. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be in the world. As per usual, this is your gracious host, Nick Banks, for all things PlayStation 4. Now, what the heck am I on about? Let's get into things. Problem number 1. Out of 10 ratings. In the end, I gave Attack on Titan Wings of Freedom a 6 out of 10. If you want to check out the full review, the link for that is, of course, in the description below there. But the problem that I face now is I've given it a 6 out of 10. I had to give it a 6 out of 10 because Titanfall I gave 7 out of 10. That is Titanfall 2. And of course, it's not as good as Titanfall 2. Okay, that should go without saying. And what I want to discuss here is the problems that can come with trying to rate a game out of 10. When you have a limiting factor of 10 separate points on which to rate a game, it is exactly that. You are boxed in and you are limiting your descriptive powers of relaying an understanding of that game and the quality of entertainment that it can provide. So in reviewing Attack on Titan Wings of Freedom, I've started thinking now, maybe I'm going to give up on giving games ratings out of 10, because sometimes it just doesn't feel fair to the game. So what was the problem that I had with Attack on Titan as a reviewer? Problem number 2, a divided audience. First of all, as I mentioned in my review, the issue with Attack on Titan being a game, and the same can go for Sword Art Online, is that potential buyers of this product are instantly split into two audiences, that being the people who have watched the show and of course the people who haven't. And Attack on Titan Wings of Freedom will resonate with those who watched the show, but for those who haven't, it will instantly be set on the back foot. It will be very confusing as a product. The story is very broadly glossed over in total throughout the game, and there are a lot of background contextual descriptive scenes, flashbacks in the series that were simply omitted from the game, and that added context into the world of Attack on Titan is missing in the game. Of course, if you've watched the show, you have all of that in the back of your mind already. This is the same kind of issue that the movie Advent Children had for Final Fantasy when it came out way back when. So, reviewers like myself then have the issue of, do I favour, in terms of rating this game, an audience who have or haven't watched the show? Of course, more often than not, it will lean towards the audience that have watched the show. They're more likely to buy the game. But then again, the people who haven't watched the show need to be taken into account, because that is a portion of this audience playing Attack on Titan. And in theory, if this game was absolutely magnificent, AAA, bestseller, then people wouldn't have had to have watched the show, because the game would simply be that good. And then you'd have a flip, and you'd have people watching the show as a result of playing the game, and not the other way around. But of course, that's all just conjecture. Problem number 3. Taking manpower into account. Now, the size of development teams are obviously a very big contributing factor to the high quality of the video games that many of us are spoiled with now. A majority of the games that I've reviewed on my website fall under this category. You know, games that are developed by the major players, EA, Ubisoft, Square Enix. And these offices for these dev teams are huge. These poor developers, the poor sods, are working day and night with hardly any time to see their family or any time for a social life, sat there punching in keys, figuring out code, making a 3D model look right, figuring out bugs in the physics engines within their games, and they are working so hard day and night. But of course, the fact that that's so difficult is lessened by the fact that you've got this huge development team. Now, in the case of Attack on Titan Wings of Freedom, Koei Tecmo surprised me when I finished the game and I sat through the credits, waiting for the after credits. There is an after credits if you're interested in buying the game. It's a little Season 2 teaser in there, which was a very nice little addition. But their team was very small. Just from the length of the credits. Recently, I finished Dishonored 2, as you know, I reviewed that, and the credits for that took blooming ages. Took forever. But the credits for Attack on Titan, Wings of Freedom, it took about 3 minutes, not very long. So what that tells me is that you've got a much, much smaller dev team creating a shelf release product. And that's a big thing too, a shelf release product. You've got a lot of indie titles, side-scrollers, platformers. I'll throw Inside Out there as an example because I freaking love that game. It's a small masterpiece. But the size of the dev team is reflected in the game. You've got a minimalist art style, a simple left to right function of movement. However, in Attack on Titan, you've got this conflict. You've got a smaller team than we're used to, delivering a full shelf release on a, strictly speaking, complex 3D spectrum of AIs, 3D models, and many more user interface inputs. Sadly, the amount of manpower put into a game is not taken into account when it is finally released to the masses, to the very picky, naive, extremely critical group of reviewers and gamers out there. Which leads me nicely onto the next problem that reviewers should take into account with games like this. Problem number 4. Working with what you've got. I just felt like doing a silly voice right there. Problem number 4, working with what you've got. Now, when you're making a game of a TV show, you've got, supposedly, everything on a silver palette right there in front of you to dip into and use as you please. But the issue that game developers have when they attempt something like this is translating a passive entertainment experience, that being sat in front of a screen watching things happen, into an interactive experience. How many facets of this delivery of entertainment can we turn into an interactive thing to play around with? Now, when you take this into account, Koei Tecmo actually did an excellent job of taking facets of the series and translating them into game bits. I'll call it game bits. For example, if you've watched Attack on Titan, then you know that the Scout Regiment likes to use flares to communicate with one another over very large landscapes. Green flare means help. And they incorporated this into the game. You can see a green flare popped off in the distance, and that's someone to go and help. And what they managed to do with this mechanic, while it sounds very simple on the surface, is introduce a sense of urgency into every single level that you play. When you rescue someone, they can come into your squad and help you fight, or they can just stay standing where they are, but they can give you extra supplies. So it's in your interest to help these people, and also if you've watched the TV show, you recognise the characters, you know who they are, and you don't want them to get gobbled up by a Titan, basically. So that's an added extra sense of urgency as well. And that's just one small part of the game that Koei Tecmo has done a good job of expanding into an interactive experience. They've also got unlockable characters throughout the game, extra characters that unlock by the end of the game, and these guys can be used in Expeditions mode, which is basically a wave survival co-op system. That's very broadly describing it. But as I say, they've done a great job with what they've had to work with. So this brings me full circle, right the way back round to problem number 1, where I have this issue about rating things out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's too much of a solidified label. I don't like this idea of sticking a label onto a game to say whether it's good or bad, because a vast majority of my readership or anyone else's readership or YouTube audience will skip to the piece of content and look for that little number, which is not fair on the game, and it's not fair on all the different complexities, the issues, the good parts of the game, the many facets of the game that need discussing, which can't be encapsulated into a single number. So when I rated Attack on Titan Wings of Freedom 6 out of 10, it felt kind of wrong. It didn't feel fair to the game, and it felt like I was just chucking a number on there for the sake of consistency with my other reviews. So that's left me in a little bit of a pickle. And another issue with this out of 10 business is that we've been very spoiled, as I say, with 7s, 8s, 9s and 10s, so that on the odd occasion that we see 5s and 6s, because the industry is so flooded, or I should say the reviews that get the most attention are of course the high rated ones, when we see the 5s and the 6s, we discount them as being bad games. But regardless of that, 5s and 6s are still in the better half of the out of 10 rating. But sadly they get snuffed out due to this oversaturation of extremely high quality games that these poor developers slave over and end up having no social life as a result. So I'm going to wrap things up now, guys. I think I've got my point across fairly well by now. Really, it's all about this out of 10 business. Should I stick with it? Is it something that you expect? Or do you actually appreciate it when you see a video or an article without an out of 10 rating, where they leave it up to you to decide whether or not what you've just seen is good news or bad news? What's better off for you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're only just now tuning in, hello there. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching the video all the way through to this point. If you did enjoy the discussion, there's going to be many more like it, so it's a no-brainer. Click that little subscribe button down there, and I'll be seeing you very soon. This is Nick Banks for all things PlayStation 4. Take it easy until the next time, guys.